Hello, everybody. How are you today? I'm excited to be here. Thank you for being here. This is Hillbilly Crime, and my name is Elizabeth, your friendly hillbilly host. And we are going to look at Susan Smith this evening and her parole hearing. I think a whole lot of people that are young probably don't even know who Susan Smith is. But we're going to take a look here and we're going to see what all she was convicted of, see what she did, and then we're going to look at the parole hearing. Oh, that's not the right one. That wasn't the one we wanted to go to. All right, this is the one we want to go to. All right, let's listen.
1994, and a desperate search for two young boys has gripped the nation.
I want to say to my babies that your mama loves you so much.
Their mother, Susan Smith, claims she's been carjacked and her sons, Michael and Alex, taken by a black man. The boy's father, David Smith, sticking by his wife's side, just like much of the country. But it's all a lie. After 9 days of searching, Susan Smith confesses to buckling her boys into the family car and driving it into a lake. Susan Smith is convicted for their deaths and sentenced to 30 years in prison. Now, 3 decades later, Smith is up for parole. And for the first time since her trial, she will hear her ex-husband David speak out to oppose her release.
Your ex-wife is going to face a parole board, and you're going to be there. What do you plan to say?
They can't let her out. For 30 years is just not enough. This wasn't an accident. She deliberately killed Michael and Alex.
You don't think she's been rehabilitated?
I don't think she'll ever be rehabilitated. To me, she's never even been really sorry for what she did.
Susan Smith's incarceration has been troubled. In 2000, she was transferred to a new prison after having sex with 2 guards. She's also been disciplined for drug use. In 2015, she wrote to a local newspaper reporter saying, quote, "I am not the monster society thinks I am. Something went very wrong that night. I was not myself. I was a good mother, and I loved my boys."
I've never denied that she was a great mother up until the moment that she killed him.
No signs.
No signs that she would ever hurt them. That's why I believed her the whole 9 days. I never doubted her.
David's emotions turned dark during Susan's trial.
As you sat there during the trial, what was going through your mind?
I used to sit there and look at the back of her head and then look at where the bailiffs were and think about killing her.
Wow.
How quick could I get to her? Could I reach her before that officer reaches me? Yeah.
You wanted her dead?
I did.
David Smith has remarried and is a father again, but he's never forgotten Michael and Alex.
Usually it's a song that I hear. No, not any particular song, just different songs. And it just makes me remember how much I miss them. How I wish I could tell them, I miss you so much.
His anguish, he says, would be greater if Susan is released.
If she does get paroled, do you worry that she's a threat to society?
What scares me is that she would get out and then running into her somewhere.
Why does that worry you?
I don't want to see her. I don't ever want to have to face her. Craig, God gives us free will. And that was her choice that night. Nobody else's choice. Nobody made it for her. She made the choice to murder Michael and Alex.
Have you forgiven her?
Of course.
Why?
It doesn't make the pain any less. But I had to forgive her. And to move on with my life, I had to forgive her because it was just going to eat me up if I didn't.
As you might imagine, it's not been an easy time for David Smith. A lot of painful thoughts of recent.
Okay. Now we want to go over here and listen to the News Nation, this was the ex-prison guard who had an
sometimes for
affair
having drugs in prison, sometimes for having sex in prison, including with 2 correctional officers. Alfred Rowe, one of the guards, has something to say about Susan Smith getting parole, and he joins me now live for this TV exclusive. Alfred, thanks for being on. First things first, do you think she should be allowed parole?
No, I don't think she should be allowed parole yet.
And why is that?
Her prison record just shows that, in my opinion, she's not really learned anything while being in prison except how to do illegal things other than the killing of her sons.
What's fascinating is that if you ask most people, they would say she never deserves parole because of the way she murdered these babies and then the lie that she told the nation. But you feel differently. You feel that her parole chances should be solely determined on this bad behavior while in prison. If she could clean up her act, kick the drugs and the manipulation, do you think she would deserve parole then?
I think everybody deserves one second chance. And that includes Susan. You know, she's got a lot of cleaning up to do before she deserves that second chance.
You know, one of the conditions for parole is often no drugs, no alcohol, no bars. You can't be associated with people in those industries, et cetera. If she were granted parole, do you think she could keep parole, or do you think she'd violate?
As extensive as her drug offenses are in prison, she would, I'd say less than a year, she'd be right back behind bars for violating the no drugs and no alcohol.
All right. And now we're going to go look at the parole board. This was the hearing that happened today.
Thank you so much. Ms. Hunter, if you can advise when the recording has begun.
Center in 1990.
Moved her fight into the lobby briefly. And one moment as we admit all parties.
She's been convicted of murder, of course. She has served 30 years, and she was 23 at the time that this incident occurred. She was sentenced to life with the eligibility of parole, so that's why she is here today. I'm not really going to speak much about the crime. There are some things that I want to cover, and that's not out of disrespect. We were very concerned about that. Today is Susan's parole hearing, and so today is going to be about Susan, and I want to make sure that the things that are important not only to her but to this hearing and this board are presented. And I want to thank you in advance for your time to listen to everything. This story is really a mental health story. Some of this stuff, I've known Susan for a couple of years, and we've been working on this case. One of the things when I first met her was, of course, trying to kind of figure out some rhyme or reason as to, you know, how these things have happened, and was able to find and have someone come to see her on a routine basis for counseling, and also to try to help her, you know, through the daily things with Department of Corrections. As a result, that's kind of what I kind of came to the conclusion was it is a mental health story. It's about the dangers of untreated mental health. It is about the lack of insight, the lack of diagnosis into mental health, and it's about stigmas, old stigmas. Of course, I'm 68 years old. I remember those. Hopefully, they're not as bad today. Susan was hospitalized as a young teen for a short period of time. for mental health treatment. And not to disparage anybody, but her mom was telling folks that she was in the hospital because she had a strep infection. So those were things that we didn't talk about. Those were things that were pushed under the rug, so to speak, because they were embarrassing. They showed weakness. I don't know what they showed, but they showed up and culminated in Susan as a result of a day that all of this came together and produced some horrendous results. So I think it's important to Susan, if anything comes out of this hearing, it's that people understand there's nothing to be ashamed of. There's nothing and no reason not to reach out and seek treatment. And there is certainly no stigma that should be involved in trying to better yourself and help yourself for yourself and for others, members of the family and everyone. Susan, moving on, Susan is a high school graduate. She has some college with USC Union. She has attended International Christian College, and she's worked on an associate's degree. She's still actually working on that in Christian counseling. She has no prior record that I'm aware of. If paroled, she would be living with her brother, Scotty Vaughn. Scotty is here today and very briefly wanted to address the board. The job for her, she has served 30 years, so she's been in Department of Corrections for a long time, would be through vocational rehab. The PEP program is probation and parole, would know it. And we have made arrangements for aftercare with a licensed mental health professional. You have that information in the packet that's been provided to you. Some of the programs, I took the time to look at everything, to look at the programs that she's been involved in. And I'm not going to speak about all of those because you have those in the packet. The ones that I think are important and relevant today is the self-harmers group. She has attempted to commit suicide on several different occasions within the Department of Corrections. 7 Habits, Beyond Abuse, Jumpstart, which she is a great fan of. She does not have a drug or alcohol addiction, thank goodness. She has been active on Ennovo and the CipherWorks programs, Loss and Grief, healing seminars, women's empowerment, anger management, self-esteem, and domestic violence workshops. I normally, and I've presented a number of parole hearings, I first started with this thinking that it had to be different than normally what I would do as far as a presentation. And I came to the conclusion maybe this week, and it doesn't. I think it is, and I will stick with what I would normally do as far as the structure of my presentation. What I always begin with the board is contributing factors because I believe that's important. We need to know what was going on, why it was going on for the board to be able to make a informed decision about her parole expectations and her parole eligibility and what kind of candidate she is for parole. One of the things that has jumped out at me, and I saw this last night in the media, and I know that Susan wants to speak, and because she feels like it's important to get the truth out there, is this is not about the love for another man. I saw it on local TV about how this was all about another man and him not wanting children. From what I have been able to determine, that is just not true. I have spoken with David Bruck, who was a defense attorney on a number of different occasions. David has been a great source of information in regards to Susan. He indicated to me that this was a theory of a motive by the state. That's where we think it developed. However, this was never proven at trial, and it was actually abandoned by the state. So, but it has stuck. And I just wanted to, I know it's important to her, to bring this to your attention. The contributing factors in this case were multiple stress points. They converged all at the same time. And we are certainly not trying to say anything about, the horrificness of this crime. It is, and she was found guilty. But we're trying to kind of maybe present to the parole board how these things developed and how it's possible that something like this could happen. One of the things that has been important in her life, and I think is a huge contributor to this crime, is the suicide of her dad at age 6. Horrific, just horrific. And she blamed herself. How could he leave me? And I think it sets the stage for the beginning of some serious mental health issues, some serious depression, which just kind of culminates and continues to snowball. And the lack of, recognition and treatment for this issue with her dad. I mean, it was like the old stigma of, we just tough through these terrible situations.
This is why lawyers have such
that's
a
how it's
bad
done.
reputation.
It's not done that way. There were some attempts to get some sort of psychological help for her after a couple of suicide attempts, and never went anywhere. She was the child. The adults in the picture did not, can't blame them. I think it was the times, did not seek and try to understand the depth and the significance of this and what it was going to produce at a later date.
This lawyer's not doing her no justice.
Severe depression. Potentially depression after the birth of her last child, which was also undiagnosed, and that postpartum depression that existed in a severe situation. Just in culmination, I apologize for reading something to the board, but I've looked at so much material, and if I can beg the board's attention for a few minutes, I would like to say this and read this because I think it summarizes everything that I've been talking about and everything that Susan wanted to talk about what happened. She said to me, and this was not in preparation for parole, I found this buried in a bunch of documents that had been provided to me. And it is from Susan. And she says, I believe this is what happened to me on October 25th, 1994. I lost touch with reality. My thoughts were not rational nor logic. I don't think I understood that if I allowed this car to go into the lake, that I would never see my children again. The finality of it was not real to me because my thoughts were so screwed up at the time. My mind, I thought, was doing what was best for them. I knew Jesus would take better care of them than I could. It was truly a moment of insanity. There are no easy explanations and not much understanding. How can you make sense of something that is senseless? And I think that shows the remorse that she's had. She's lived with this for forever since this thing. When I first met her and I would go and see her, remorse is difficult. That's something with the parole hearings that I've presented for years.
I know. You guys don't care. I'm gonna.
How do you demonstrate remorse?
People this guy is just
do it in different manners, and I always look for that. I always ask my clients, and a horrific situation. I want to thank you for your time. I know I've taken a lot of time today. I would just ask if you would please consider her for release.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas, and we appreciate all your
ma'am.
Now we're going to hear her.
And again, thank you for the very detailed packet that you presented. Ms. Smith,
Yes, ma'am.
what would you like to tell us today?
That lady looks hard.
First of all, I want to say how very sorry I am.
He said remorse was hard.
It's okay, Susan. Just talk with us.
I know that what I did was horrible. And
That little boy looked just like her, didn't he?
And I would give anything if I could go back and change
That
it.
older one.
And I love Michael and Alex with all my heart.
What a shame.
Ms. Smith, were you under the influence of drugs or alcohol the night that you murdered your children?
No, ma'am, I was not.
Your attorney talked about working with mental health. Is that helpful to you?
Ma'am,
Mr. Thomas,
I hear you.
Mr. Thomas talked about the fact that you were working with mental health. And my question is that helpful to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that something that you would be willing to continue with on the outside if you were granted parole?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Smith, your crime took a lot of resources from the law enforcement community. What, if anything, would you say to the folks who worked so hard to find your children if you had the opportunity to speak to them today?
That I'm sorry that I put them through that. I really, really am. And I'm especially sorry to the person that had to find them. I wish I could take that back. I really do. I didn't lie to get away with it. I really did. I was just scared. I didn't know how I could tell the people that loved them that they would never see them again. I didn't know how I could tell David he couldn't see his sons again. And I'm sorry. I don't know. I know that's not enough. I know it's not, but I don't know. I know they just have like words, but they come from my heart. They really do.
Right. One of the things that we review is your institutional record, and you've had some infractions throughout the years, some involving the use of some narcotics. Do you have any issues with drugs or alcohol at this point?
I don't. No, ma'am, I don't.
And you had a recent disciplinary infraction just a few months ago. So why should this board think that if we grant you parole that you're going to go out and follow the rules and the laws of society if you do not follow the rules within the institution?
Well, this last infraction, I was trusted the wrong person. This lady contacted me, and I trusted her. I thought she was going to do a documentary on mental health, and I really am not guilty of what they charged me with, and I have filed an appeal on that charge. And as far as your question, I've never been in trouble before, and the things that I have been found guilty of in here have been just stupidity. I know I made a lot of mistakes in here, and I have learned from them. And before this last infraction, it had been 10 years. Because I grew up and I knew that I needed to stop making dumb decisions. And I did. I knew it was time to grow up and do the right thing. I just made a lot of dumb choices and mistakes in here. So I know I've learned from those mistakes.
What do you feel is the most
And I'm not
important
gonna
thing
do
that
that.
you've learned while you've been incarcerated?
Ma'am,
What do you think is the most important thing that you have learned while you have been incarcerated?
that people are important, that forgiveness and love, that family is important, and that decisions we make don't just affect us, they affect the people that we love. And not to take things or people for granted.
All right. Is there anything else that you would like to tell us today that wasn't in your packet or that has not already been said?
I would just like to say that I am a Christian and God is a big part of my life, and I know He has forgiven me. And it is by His grace and mercy that, and I have a lot of faith, and I live by that every day. And I just ask that you show that same kind of mercy as well. And I guess, yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
I
Are there
don't
any
think.
other questions
Okay,
that were on
thank
the board? Folks at Watkins, I need each of you to please state your name for the record and your relationship to Ms. Smith. Ma'am, can we begin with you, please?
Ma'am, state your name and your relationship. What? Ma'am, state your name and relationship.
I do not, is it I?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Ann Curry, and I'm a long-term friend and supporter of Susan.
Thank you, Ms. Curry. And sir, your name, please?
And the,
State your name, sir, and your relationship. State your name and your relationship.
okay, I'm the Reverend Tom Curry. I've known Susan briefly when she was a teenager, when I was called in for one session each, counseling about two different matters, once by her teacher and once by Susan. And I testified at her trial, which in the sentencing phase, and I have kept up with her by writing her weekly for the last 30 years. I did this because I felt that she needed somebody to remind her that her whole life was not caught up in that one experience, but that she could put her life back together, because her life was in such turmoil when all this happened. And I think she's a different person now. And that's what I want to talk about when I get a chance to say a word about it. I have new hearing aids, and I can't always hear your questions, but my mind's fine, and I'm just a retired Presbyterian minister alone.
Well, thank you, Mr. Curry. We appreciate that, and you're welcome. You're welcome to make your statement that you would like to make right now.
All right. Okay, I want to start with her trial.
Mr. Curry, let me interrupt you before you get too far into that. We are not here to retry her case in any form or fashion. That is not the purpose of the parole board. We are here to determine if she is a good candidate for parole, and if so, we would set the parameters of that parole. But in no way can we discuss the trial or retry her case. She was convicted of 2 counts of murder. If you'd like to speak to anything outside of that, you're welcome to.
Okay, now, I just want to say 2 things about the trial. I only went to the trial for one part of one morning. to testify at the sentencing phase against the death penalty. And the two things that I picked up from the trial itself was one, a prison guard who became a female who said that she had not seen a criminal as remorseful as Susan was, and that she felt her remorse for what she had done was genuine. And the second thing was one of the jurors. The prosecuting attorney was pushing hard for the death penalty, and the jury voted not, and they voted life, as y'all have already mentioned. But one of the jurors said that she felt like that it would be harder for Susan to live with what she had done than to die. And I thought that was a true statement. And it certainly has been for Susan during her 30 years in prison, and especially the first part of her time that she was there. It's been mentioned she attempted suicide several times, and she had a couple of run-ins where guards were able to use her for their pleasure, and that's a bad situation, and was dealt with, and she was not the only prisoner involved.
All right, thank you, Mr. Curry. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your comments. Mrs. Curry, do you wish to say anything?
Yes, please, and thank you for letting us speak. I just want to say that I really think Susan is ready for parole now. She has surrounded herself with a caring support community that advises and encourages her, and she listens to them. As Mr. Thomas said, she has done everything she can to prepare herself to live outside of prison and taking courses and learning how to teach and caring about other people and working on teams and projects together. And thirdly, as both of them have said, she is not the young woman who went into prison 30 years ago. She is much stronger. She has grieved, is still grieving, will always grieve. But she's learned from it. And she has experienced paralyzing remorse and survived. Today, she wants to begin to rebuild her life. And I'm glad you're here.
I want to say one more word. For the last 2 years, now remember, I've been a runner for 30 years, once a week, pretty close to every week. And that is, the last 2 years, I've ended my letters by saying, Susan, you live in a needy place. Right? Share God's love with those around you and with your other contacts, but always live in hope for your own future. There is a time when you will live on your own again past prison, and that's what I hope you all will give her the chance to do at this time. She is a very different person from what she was 30 years ago. And I've probably been in contact with her talking about spiritual things, but also just trying to enlarge her life by telling her about what's going on in the world around her and in the Curry family. She's the same age as one of my children.
All right, thank you, Mr. Curry. We appreciate all of your comments. We appreciate all of your comments and all of the information. Mr. Thomas, anything in closing, sir?
No, ma'am. Nothing further than I really would ask the board to take the time to consider Susan's request for parole. I do believe that if we look at insight into things that we've done and as far as things that we need to do to get out of the Department of Corrections and to try to make our life worthwhile or mean something, I think Susan is at that point. And I just, again, want to thank you for listening today and hope you would consider our presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Thank you, Ms. Smith, and thank you,
Yes,
Mr. and
ma'am.
Mrs. Curry. We certainly appreciate all of you joining us today. If you all will please exit the rooms, we will have an answer for you later today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
One moment as the room clears. And the room is clear, and we do have additional testimony facilitated by the Office of Victim Services.
Please wait as all victims join from central office.
Boy, this parole board has went, or this parole hearing has went awful. It ain't no wonder she got denied. My goodness.
Good afternoon. You all come on
There's
down.
their daddy.
Thank you.
They're in the front. That
Can you
must
move
be
just a little
Zoom,
further around so we can get everyone in. Thank you so much. Thank you. Good afternoon. You all are here for the parole consideration case of Susan Smith. Is that correct?
Yes.
We are so very, very sorry for the circumstances that brought you all to be a part of this hearing today. But we cannot tell you how much we appreciate you joining us and being here with us today. Thank you so much. Before we begin, I do need each of you to please state your name for the record and your interest in this case. Sir, can we begin with you, please?
Stand up.
You don't have to stand up. You do whatever's comfortable for you.
I'm David Smith. I'm the father of Michael and Alex.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
And Tiffany Smith. I am David Smith's wife.
I'm Rebecca Smith French. I'm the aunt of Michael and Alex.
I'm Savannah Smith, and I am David's daughter, Michael and Alex's sister.
Austin Hughes. I'm a friend of the victim family.
I'm Tommy Pope. I was the solicitor in the original trial.
I'm Kevin Brackett. I'm the 16th Circuit solicitor currently and was a prosecutor on the original case.
Laura Hudson with the Crime Victims Council.
Mark Reynolds. I'm with the victim's family. Billy Bailey, personal friend.
My mama Doug.
Kathy Bailey, personal friend.
Jeff Bailey, Sheriff, Union County. Scott Cooper, Sheriff's Office, Union County.
Michael Cogdill, documentarian.
Rita Swan, aunt to Michael and Alex.
Doug Smith, Dave's uncle.
Thank you all. And again, we are so very, very sorry for the circumstances, but thank you for being here with us today.
Nobody showed up for her.
The facts of the offense, and we've heard from Ms. Smith. Now we want to hear from you all, whether you were for or against parole. And if anyone would like to make a statement, you are certainly welcome to do so. Mr. Smith, would you like to begin, or would you like to conclude at the end? It's completely up to you.
Conclude at the end, please.
Okay. Who would like to speak first?
I'll speak first, please, ma'am.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
So I'm Tommy Pope. I was the 16th Circuit solicitor, and this was a death penalty case. And the reason it was a death penalty case, the solicitor has that discretion, but the reason it was a death penalty case, the facts and circumstances. And I just felt strongly that had the black man with the toboggan committed the crime, people would expect a death penalty. If David Smith had committed the crime, people would expected the death penalty. And I thought it was very important that the portrayal that Susan Smith showed, that she be treated the same. We knew it was going to be difficult. We knew there was a likelihood of not achieving the death penalty. But I think it's important to note the jury at the time actually asked, what did life mean? And if you may be aware, but in that time, life did not mean life. Life became life in 96. We tried the case in 95. So the jury was asked, and the judge was required to instruct the jury that you take life and death in its plain and usual meaning. Carrying that forward, the jury showed her mercy. The jury gave her a life sentence. But one of the jurors, or more of the jurors, after the fact and speaking to the media, said that they believed the life sentence was the greater punishment because they believed that Susan should have to reflect
on what she did to Michael and Alex, that she should have to spend the rest of her life thinking about what she'd done. The two fallacies in that logic that the jury could not have known are, number one, obviously we're here today, so life did not mean life. Number two, and you have it before you, Susan's conduct from the day she rolled the kids in the lake. The defense claimed a botched suicide, but she was able to save herself. She was able to blame a black guy. She wasn't wet. She wasn't injured when she runs to the house and concocts this story. Susan has always focused on Susan. I will believe to the end of my time that Susan made a horrible, horrible choice to choose a man over her family.
And I have to say this. I have to stop this and say this real quick. If that had been a black man that had committed that crime, they probably would have given him the death penalty. So, Buckwheat, you hit that nail right on the head.
I said the boys were in the car, her wedding gown was in the car, the wedding album was in the car. She thought in a nice package she could roll that away. If she could have put David in the car, he would have been there too. In a nice package, she could roll that away and start this new life with this other man. And she led everyone on, including David, for 9 horrible days. And so as you look at her conduct in prison, whether it was a relationship with guards, the social media, the attention, the conduct recently with the publisher, Susan, she's got people outside. I'm sure you've heard from them that want to take care of her. Susan has always focused on what's best for Susan. And so the evidence that you have before you, I think, tells clearly that she has not focused on Michael and Alex. She only has and continues to focus on herself. And so on behalf of this family, on behalf of justice and the justice for this case, it's not about her behavior or what she would do when getting out, but I know one of your criteria is the nature of the crime and whether the punishment is there. And I would submit for the crime she committed, the actions she committed, that punishment has not been achieved yet. And so I would ask you to deny parole. Now, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Solicitor Cody. Appreciate it.
Good job, listener.
Anyone else like to speak?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Madam Chairman, Chair Lady, and members of the board, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. I was on the prosecution team that handled the prosecution along with Solicitor Pope, Speaker Pope now, who you just heard from. I wanted to bring to you a couple of vignettes from the case to help bring this alive for you. In the course of preparing for today, I've gone back over the case. I've reviewed the file. I've pulled some of the evidence out, which is in a closet just off my office. Evidence like the note that was written to Susan Smith by her boyfriend, the man she was cheating on her husband with, who told her in the note that he could not be with her anymore because he didn't want children, and that they had no long-term future because he didn't want children. And then 1 week later, she's rolling her car down the ramp at John D. Long Lake with her 2 children strapped into the back. She betrayed her husband when she cheated on him, and she betrayed her children against the laws of nature when she should have been sworn to protect those children. She betrayed them when she left them in the seat and rolled that car down. And she was not trying to commit suicide. She was trying to change her life. She wanted to kill her old life and start anew. She was wearing a sweatshirt that the man who she was cheating with had given to her when she was on TV 2 hours later, after claiming that a black man in a toboggan had carjacked her and spirited her 2 children away. How many black men in red Mazdas got pulled over across the country because they were looking for those 2 kids, and they were looking for this fictitious man that didn't exist, purely a figment of her imagination. I was on the banks of John D. Long Lake, standing there with about 40 or 45 people, 50 people, as the tow truck from Greer's Wrecker launched its line into the water, where divers hooked it up to the car and pulled it out. Total silence as that car emerged from the dark water. Everybody sitting there hoping and praying that maybe it was a different car. Maybe it was a wrong car. Maybe the kids weren't in there. Not a word was said. It was one of the most haunting memories of my life, and it will live with me forever. And that's the last point I want to make. You're going to hear from this man, and he's going to tell you what this did to him. I can't begin to describe it. I sat in court and listened to him testify, and it was heart-wrenching as he described that his hopes and dreams for the future were destroyed that night when she killed their 2 children. This didn't just traumatize him. It traumatized Union. It traumatized South Carolina. The entire country was in the grips of her lie and her treachery. The entire country. This was a global sensation. People were fixated on this. They're not the only victims. And on behalf of the community that I represent now, I don't believe she should ever be released from jail until the last person alive who remembers Michael and Alex is dead. And that will not be in her lifetime. She should never be released, and she should not be released now. His hopes and dreams were dashed. I hope you dash hers today and every 2 years hereafter.
Thank you so much. Does anyone else wish to speak?
Thank you for the super sticker, love bug. Anybody who wants to become a member, we've got memberships now to become a part of the Hillbilly family.
I'm going to read what I wrote. Okay, it's easy, if you don't mind. When Susan murdered Michael and Alex, she altered the course of my life and my family's life forever. Having grown up with 3 older brothers, Susan was like the sister I never had. I was a teenage mom of just 16, so I looked up to her and even admired her. I thought she was the best mother to the boys, and I strived to be just like her. I would even leave my own daughter with her while I attended night school. Susan betrayed us and took the lives of those boys and then lied about it. For days, when she did this, she destroyed a trust in me that I've never regained. And as a result, I do not develop close relationships with others easily, in particular females. Anxiety and depression have plagued my life for years. I push it away during spring and summer as best possible, but it always creeps back up around Alex's birthday when it rolls around in August, because I know Michael's won't be far behind in October, and then the anniversary of their death on the 25th. In my mind, it always refer to this period of time as the sad months. Throughout my career, the majority of any time missed at work is around Michael and Alex's birthdays and the anniversary of their death. I stay in bed and sleep to deal with the depression. It's just easier this way, or at least it seems to be. Something as simple as taking up a new hobby turned into a nightmare for me last year. My boyfriend and I decided to take scuba diving lessons. I geared up with all the equipment, face mask on, oxygen tank on my back, stepped off the side of the pool into 15 feet of water and immediately sank to the bottom from all the weight I was carrying. Normally, you'd remember to breathe and begin to ascend as I had studied for all the weeks leading up to that point, but nothing prepared me for dropping into a body of water and the feeling of being weighted down, unable to breathe, and seeing Michael and Alex's face. I immediately panicked, ripping off my face mask, sucking in water, and not being able to come to the surface from all the weight I was carrying. I was drowning, and I knew in that moment that was the closest I'd ever come to knowing what my nephews had endured and how horrific and scared their last moments had to have been. Something as simple as taking up a new hobby was yet one more thing Susan was taken from me. In over 25 years, I have found myself finding comfort going to the cemetery where the boys are buried, beside our older brother. I go there often and I will tidy up their graves where people have left trinkets or gifts, and I talk to them. I go there when I'm happy. I go there when I'm upset. Rainy days, sunny days, cold days and hot days, it doesn't matter. It brings me peace just being there. But as a result, I'm not able to bring myself to move away from Union County because now I don't want to leave them. We have missed Michael and Alex's kindergarten graduations, numerous birthdays, birthday parties, summer vacations, Easters, along with annual Easter egg hunts at Meemaw's, Thanksgivings, Christmases, football, soccer, baseball games, proms, high school graduations, possible marriages, and births of their own children. We don't know, because they never had a chance. They never had a chance to live a life of their own. Susan took that from them. She took that from us all. And now she wants a chance to be free after only serving 30 years. No. Life should mean life.
What's that?
I'm respectfully asking you to please deny her request for parole. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. She came across real well. Bless her heart.
I apologize if I get a little bit emotional. I drove down from Detroit on Monday night, which was Halloween before of that week. And a young man, middle-aged man then, I'm an old man now, but the boys never got to. As Becky said, they missed a lot. They missed their life. Today they would be in their 30s. David would probably be a granddad. The boys were still here. I took my sister out to the lake yesterday, and it's a beautiful drive out there. And I was just thinking, all that time she had time to change her mind, to stop and turn around and not go through with it, but she did. And then the boys were gone. A year later, I came back down for the trial. Tommy Polk did a good job. They proved that she was guilty. During the sentencing trial, they came back and recommended life. Tommy had argued for the death penalty. The family was for death penalty. They come back and recommended life. But we said, well, we'll live with it. You know, she'll have to live with it every day for the rest of her life. So we were satisfied with life, but we do not want a parole. We were against any parole for her. And then two other items going back 30 years. The Friday morning after But the Friday morning after, David, his dad, my brother's wife, and I, the four of us, were sitting at Holcomb Funeral Home in Union and discussing the funeral arrangements. David asked to see the boys, and Mr. Holcomb had a funny look on his face, and he said, "Mr. Smith, could I see you?" So we went out, and he said, "You know, your nephew can't see the boys." And he told me why. He said, "You know, the boys were in the water for 9 days." So I went back and told David, I said, "You know, it's better that you don't see the boys." And I think deep down he understood why.
I'd want to see my kids.
The next day, Saturday, three of us, David, his dad, and I went out to the Bougainville United Methodist Church Cemetery and to look where the boys are going to be buried. And David's brother, Danny, who had died 3 years earlier, was buried there. David wanted his boys buried next to his brother, their uncle. But the way the cemetery was laid out, there was no room for the boys to be put next to Danny. So I found the cemetery custodian and asked him
it were possible to move Danny. And he said, well, yes, if that's what the family wants, we can move Danny. So I went back and told my brother. Said, David wants the boys to be next to their uncle. Would you have a problem if we moved Danny?
So much
And
suffering.
he said, no. So if you go out to the cemetery, you'll find that Danny and the boys are side by side.
Bless her. Gosh, mighty. All that pain she caused to so many people.
Yes, I'll vote this. So as David's wife, I have stood by him for the last 30 years and watched his pain, his suffering, his dark days that you cannot imagine. It's been hard as a loving wife to stand back and watch him suffer the pain that he has gone through. To not want to get out of bed some days. To not be able to get out of bed. Because the pain was so much for him. And for 30 years we had thought this day would never come. But yet here we are. I don't feel that it's time for her to be let out because she took 2 lives. She didn't just take 1. She took 2 precious little boys that we haven't been able to watch grow up. And as Becky stated earlier, all the things that we've missed out on because of them not being here, all the things they missed out on growing up in and doing. And for her to be in prison for the last 30 years, you would think that she would have thought about what she's done. She would have said, I'm sorry. But she hasn't said, I'm sorry. She hasn't even called him. She hasn't even told him she was sorry. Much less the world. For 9 days, all I can think about is how much she lied and manipulated everybody. The whole world. I watched it and believed her myself. I wanted her to be telling the truth. But to be betrayed by her lies. And that just makes me feel like if she could do that then, whatever she's told you today, I'm sure were probably lies as well. Because she has shown in her last 30 years what she does in prison. She's all about herself. It's all about what she can do to make her life better. And Michael and Alex didn't get a chance at life. They were forced the death penalty. She took that from them. The lives of this family has been forever changed. It caused us to be a little overprotective of our now daughter. A little bit more than we probably should have been. Because we were afraid something might happen to her. It's changed the way we look at life. It's changed the way that we look at everybody. Who can I trust? For a long time, I didn't trust a lot of people. I had to be careful, around certain people. I didn't know if I could trust them or not. All because of her lies. So to give this family some peace, it would be best if Susan stayed behind bars and stay in prison for the rest of her life. I respectfully ask you to keep her in. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak for Mr. Smith? Sheriff, anyone? Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me.
Their sister.
Most of what I have to say is going to be pretty redundant. But primarily, I would just like to focus on, since I came after the fact, what I had stolen from me was 2 older brothers, the good and the bad of having older siblings. And I now try to use my life as a way to live for them. And growing up, I didn't quite understand it my whole life, but when I finally did, I felt like I had witnessed it, like I was there. The pain that not only was caused to me in like a domino effect, but what I've seen firsthand with my father, my aunt, and our whole hometown. We can no longer say that we're from Union County without Susan's actions being brought up. And just for the sake of all of us and our whole community, I ask that you deny her request.
Mr. Smith, you're welcome to stay seated if you are not comfortable.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee. It's been a tough 30 years. I'm not here to speak about what she's done in prison. You all have the records and accounts of all that. I'm just here to advocate on Michael and Alex's behalf and as their father. You know, God gives us free choice. And she made free choice that night to end her life. This wasn't a tragic mistake. It wasn't something that she didn't mean to do. She purposely meant to end her life. I never have felt any remorse from her for it. She's never expressed any to me. I never seen it on paper. No, you've heard, she changed my life for the rest of my life that night. Some for the better, some for the worse, but what she did, not only to Michael and Alex, she came pretty close to causing me to end my life because of the grief that she brought upon me. But thankfully she didn't. I understand back in 95 that through the state's law, life in prison meant 30 years to life. And now that's different, but at that time, that's what counts. I understand that. But ultimately, to me, That's only 15 years per child. Her own children. It's just not enough. So I'm asking that you please deny her parole today. And hopefully in the future, but specifically today. Not let her out. I miss them very much. And I love them very much. And I will be here every 2 years going forward to ensure that their death doesn't go in vain. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
This family should not have to do this every 2 years.
Again, please know how very, very sorry this board is to all of you for all the pain that this crime caused you. But we sincerely appreciate you all being here with us today. Thank you very much. And thank you for the reminder with the picture of Alex and Michael. They were beautiful children. So thank you for reminding us of that today. We wish you the very best. And if no one else has anything else that they would like to say, if you all will exit with these ladies over here, we'll have an answer for you shortly. Thank you so much for being here.
I bet that answer doesn't take very long. They already know what they're going to do. I would. That lady, that chair lady, she ain't no joke either, is she?
As a reminder, Mrs. Mira did recuse herself. Ms. Susan Smith is denied parole. The vote is unanimous. Numbers 1 and 6. Thank you.
There we go, y'all.
Thank you. The time now is 12:51 p.m. We will pause our recording. Ms. Hunter, if you can advise when the recording has been paused.
The recording has been paused.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This is Valerie Suber, Associate Deputy Director for Paroles, Pardons, and Relief Services.
Now let's
If
go
everyone would just give me a moment to give.
Dad.
Well, today has been 30 years coming. Wasn't sure how to feel, what to expect. I know what I was hoping. I think, Susan, in the last 30 years, through her action, has continued to proven that it's all about her. What all this has done to her, how it has affected her.
Yep.
I haven't seen any remorse from her. So for her to think that I would even speak on her behalf, I do not understand that.
Yeah, she asked him to speak for her.
But it's been such a tough 30 years.
Audacity.
For my family, for friends, loved ones, near and far. But today, the committee made the right decision and denied her parole.
Yeah.
At least for another 2 years. So I'm not looking forward to it in 2 more years to go through this again, but at least I know for now she'll still be behind bars. And for 2 more years, there'll still be justice for Michael and Alex. Thank you.
No.
You want me to answer if they have any? We've got Kevin Brackett, who was my deputy solicitor at the time. Kevin is now the solicitor in York and Union counties. He tried the case with me. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer. Yes, sir.
Are you surprised by the result today?
Personally, now I've got to speak for me. David and his family, he can speak for himself, but we were cautiously optimistic. I think, as David said, she's demonstrated that it's always been about Susan from the day she committed the crime. And so I think we're hopeful, we're happy. It's unfortunate that the law wasn't what it is now, that life meant life, because as we spent the last 3 hours together, kind of reminiscing as a family, and we'll all be back 2 years from now, or as Solicitor Brackett said, as long as somebody's remembering Michael and Alex, we'll all be back here.
She mentioned living with her brother if she gets out. Do you want to see her back in the community?
From the folks I've spoken to in the Union community, they are ready to quit being the place where Susan Smith killed her children. I think the family members have said it's robbed them of their community and the love of their community. Absolutely, the best thing would be, if Susan was ever paroled, is that she would just disappear and go be anonymous somewhere. But unfortunately, we know based on her behavior that that's not going to happen.
No, I think, as I told the parole board, she traumatized not just the family, but she traumatized that entire community and left a scar on Union that will exist as long as people remember what she did, which is going to be for a long time. So I don't think anybody would be excited to see her return.
Yes, sir.
After having to seek the death penalty or after seeking the death penalty of this ending up the way it did, what will it mean to have to do this every 2 years?
It is a torture for this family. It was a reunion of sorts. I've shared with you before that I don't contact these folks because we represent a bad time in their lives. But when I see them, I'll start crying now talking about it. The sad thing is that every 2 years, as David said, the clock starts ticking. 30 years seems like it went like this, but the flip side is that this is a strong family. David has put it from the beginning that it's about Michael and Alex. And as long as I can draw breath and be here to support them, and I know the family feels the same, we'll be here.
I'm not sure you saw the
Yes, ma'am.
statement. I'm not sure you saw the statement that Susan Smith delivered earlier today. She was tearful. She appeared remorseful. But do you think she's the same woman she was 30 years ago?
Allison.
I believe Susan is the same woman she was 30 years ago when she laughed in the courtroom when the jury wasn't in and cried as soon as the jury came in. And I got no reason to believe anything different. We weren't able to see the feed that you guys saw, so I don't know if you saw. Kevin and I were discussing all the way from the day she called David Smith and he came out to the house, and he's on television, looks like a man who just told he lost his children, and Susan's excited about being on television. So I believe her to be the same. Solicitor, you may want to weigh in.
I completely agree. You look at her record in jail and ask yourself, does this appear to be a woman who's changed her behavior, changed her life? If she were released, she would capitalize on this. She would attempt to monetize her fame. She does not need to be out of jail. She needs to stay in jail. These boys had 140 to 150 years of life ahead of them. She should stay there at least that long.
There you go.
I'm the Reverend, and we want to say we appreciate y'all hard work that y'all done, because the black families and a lot of young black men were being attacked, because of what she said, and you went down and got the truth. And as a minister and for other ministers, I come to tell y'all thank y'all for what y'all done. Reverend, we'll pray for you and your family too.
Reverend, I want to tell you I appreciate it. I've been asked over the years about the racial aspect of it.
That's
and
great.
I'll tell you, that community, they think because we're Southern, because we sound like me, that there's going to be an issue. That community handled that issue. A reporter asked an African-American lady in Union, what do you think about the community blaming a black man? And she said the community didn't blame a black man. Susan Smith blamed the black man. So I appreciate your words here, and I know the family does.
I told him, when the police come, put your hands up and just say, I ain't done nothing, mister. I ain't got no gun, I ain't got no chip. And the police are very respectful. They came and searched the house, they pulled the guys over that was in the red muzzle, and they checked out, they wasn't there, they treated people fair. But we think you, because you went down and got the truth out.
Well, I made a point of telling the parole board that those people, how many black men who happen to resemble the man she imagined driving a red Mazda in California or Colorado or Missouri, how many of those people got pulled over because of what she did? They're all victims too.
So you mentioned too, you said if it had been a black man who had been arrested and charged, he would have gotten the death penalty. If it had been James Smith, he would have gotten the death penalty. What made it different for Susan?
I think the difference for Susan Smith was a combination, and only really the jurors can answer that. I think the fact the trial was in Union and you're going to see the same people at the grocery store every day, I think that made a difference. I think it makes us uncomfortable. It's actually a lot easier to blame the criminal or blame the father. We leave our kids at home every day with our mothers, and we don't think about it, and so I think it was unsettling, and they wanted to think there was some reason. It's hard for us to grasp that Susan's sole reason was selfishness and what was best for Susan.
And it's precisely that betrayal, because people expect their mothers to protect their children and lay down their very lives for them. And it's precisely that betrayal that makes this case so disturbing and such a terrible crime.
How does the community move forward after today's showing and knowing you still got a path ahead? How do you move forward?
I think the difficulty is for these folks moving forward. I think Union, just like I'll always be the Susan Smith prosecutor, Union will always be the place where Susan Smith took Michael and Alex's life. I think where your prayers need to be, Reverend, is praying, as you said, for this family and for God's peace on them, because they're going to be dealing with it long after we go back home. Hug your kids tonight. Remember the positive things, and remember how hard this family fought and what they've been through and how they stood strong for Michael and Alex. Thank you, guys. Yes.
Her attorney brought up her past as part of her dad committed suicide.
Yes.
How much do you think that played a role in the court decision today? Do you think he thought about that enough?
I think the defense presented that, all the way back in death penalty, and I think that may have helped in mitigation. She went from Susan the monster at the time of the crime to Susan the victim when we're trying it in July. But the truth is, if you peel back the facts, as horrible as that is, she made choices. It's like David said today. She chose. If it had been a botched suicide, she could have shown up at that house wet. She could have shown up at that house injured. She could have come and said, I made a horrible mistake. She didn't. It was all about what's best for Susan. And so those are sad, tragic circumstances, may have made the woman she is, but the woman she is made a horrible decision and took 2 precious lives. Ready, guys? Good. Thank you for your time today. Thank you.
All right, y'all. So that was the end of Susan Smith for another 2 years anyway. I just wanted to say something, that somebody in there mentioned postpartum depression. And I know there are many women who deal with postpartum depression, and some of them go a little off the rocker with it. But if she had had any kind of postpartum issues, you'd think that the family would have known that, because anybody that's around you can see that kind of stuff going on, whether it's your family, your friends, or whatever. So it's really important. Love Bug said something, I think it was earlier. If you see something, say something. If you see something, say something. Even if you end up being wrong, you might just save somebody. You never know. And so, and I'm not just talking about like what Susan Smith did. I just mean about anything. If you see anything, say something, because you might just make the difference. All right, guys. We've been on here for over an hour, so we'll cut this one off, and we'll see y'all tomorrow. Okay. And you all have a great rest of your night. Thank you for coming. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe. And become a member. Become a member of our Hillbilly family. We're getting ready to do a whole lot of good stuff. I'm searching for me a co-host. So we're going to have a little bit of variety. But anyway, we're going to get it going. Well, you guys have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you later, okay? Bye. Hug your babies tonight. Hug your babies. Tell them that you love them. Bye, everybody. I love you.